Hi everybody, welcome to Woodfired Weekly at Manna from Devon Cooking School. This week we're going to be talking about heat. Where is my heat coming from in the oven? Is it stable? Is it even? Is it going to last a long time? All of those technical details which can help us just understand a little bit about how we can cook to the very best of our ability. So we're going to talk first of all about this sort of oven, which has a lot of thermal mass, a lot of ability to absorb heat and retain that heat over a long period of time. This sort of oven will give us the most stable cooking environment because the entire oven becomes a heating element. Then we've got three sources of heat: the oven, the embers, and any flame which we might have in the oven. And if you look at our little thermometer readings over there, you'll see that the top one says 371, the bottom one says 305. That top one is a little thermometer I've got sat on top of the oven, inside all of the insulation, but on top of the oven. So it's telling me how much heat has travelled from inside all the way to the outside of the oven. 370 degrees is close to but not quite saturated. So I have seen that thermometer up at kind of 420 if I've been cooking lots of pizzas over a long period of time. But it is holding a lot of heat, and that heat will last a long time and is very stable. So even if I took all of those bed of embers out, I still have a nice hot oven starting at 270 degrees and falling from there. And tomorrow morning I'd still have an oven sat at 100 degrees. I could cook easily for 18 hours with the heat of the oven. But it's probably going to give me a maximum of 270, which wouldn't last for very long because the oven is dropping. And if you're imagining it over a graph, it will drop fairly quickly to start with and then flatten out and be fairly steady, falling very gently over a long period of time. With a bed of embers in there, I can bring my heat up over 300 degrees, maybe close to even to 400 degrees. So with that bed of embers I've got sat in there and this nice hot oven, I've got a sort of 1.5 Mississippi oven, so close to 400 degrees. If I want to get anything above that, oven and embers are not going to do it. So then I need some flame. So as soon as I pop some wood on here, and we get a little bit of flame going, I get a very, very quick release of energy from my fuel. So flames are really volatile chemicals burning off. So the wood heats up, releases volatile chemicals, and those chemicals combust as long as there's a heat source and a little bit of oxygen. Let's give it a little bit of oxygen. And because a lot of energy is released very quickly, that's a big old burst of heat. But it doesn't tend to last very long. So the chemicals in wood burn relatively quickly, release a lot of energy, but over a short period of time. And then we get a bed of embers, which can sit there and actually provide heat for an hour, a little bit more than an hour, depending on the wood and of course the amount of embers we've got there. So almost as soon as that wood gets burning, I can feel an increase in temperature in the oven. And if you want to cook pizzas, you really need a bright flame burning because that's the only source of heat which is going to give you that much energy at once. If I've got an oven which doesn't have a lot of thermal mass, which doesn't have that background heat of 370 on the outside of the dome giving me 275 before I even start with the embers, then of course I'm much more reliant on my embers and my flame. And that's great, I can manage that, except it's not quite so long-lived and flame is not very stable. So embers, I can set up a nice bed of embers on either side of an oven and have a good deal of stability over a reasonably long period of time, certainly over an hour. But with a flame, that flame goes up quickly and then drops, up quickly and then drops, so it's not very stable at all. It tends to bounce up and down as I add more wood. So the oven, longevity and stability. Embers, stability. Flame, maximum heat but unstable. And also, of course, embers and flame come from one spot. So we've got a big old heat source at the back of the oven, cold air being drawn in through the front, a variety of temperatures around the oven. So it's relatively uneven. The oven is a 360 degree three-dimensional heating element, and it's got pretty even heat from every side all at the same time. So it is definitely the most even. So for baking, where my holy grail for baking is evenness and stability, this kind of oven is great. A non-thermal mass oven is manageable, but I have to work a little bit harder, shall we say, to create that stability and evenness. So all the time when I'm cooking, I'm thinking about where is my heat coming from, and is it enough, and how can I use that to my advantage? And I can use it to my advantage. So I might have an oven which is sitting nice and quietly, cooking something over a long period of time, and then I suddenly want a burst of heat because I want to brown the top. Maybe I want to crisp up some crackling on some pork or finish a dish. So I've got an oven or a bed of embers giving me long, relatively stable heat, but relatively quiet. And then I can just get some flame, pump up the heat for 5 minutes, brown the top, finish off some crackling, whatever it might be. So I play around with those heat sources to best effect. And it takes a little bit of practice and a little bit of playing around to understand all of that. But all the time, I'm just thinking about where's the heat, what's happening, and what do I want to happen next. We're now out in the garden with the Morso Forno oven. This oven is completely uninsulated, made of cast iron. Great weight, and cast iron does hold a small amount of heat. Anyone who cooked with a cast iron pan will know that. But compared to the big refractory ovens, it's a minuscule amount. It does have a refractory floor, and that's certainly holding some temperature. But really our primary source of heat in the Morso Forno is always going to be the fire and the bed of embers. So we have to keep that rolling at a much faster rate to create heat, and we're trying to control that to give us the exact cooking temperature that we want. What we have got with this is the benefit of a very hot surface on the top, and we can use that to do some great cooking. If I have a look at the temperature on top, above 300 degrees on my little thermometer there, easily enough to bring a pan of water to the boil, certainly enough to bake a flatbread, to cook a sauce, all sorts of things I can do to use that heat. Finally, in this video, we're going to talk about the heat in the Alpha 4 Peats oven, and this kind of applies to any stainless steel oven of this sort, this barrel vault insulated oven with a refractory floor. So what we've got here is a thin layer of stainless steel which provides the top of the oven, and outside that a nice layer of insulating blanket. As soon as that steel gets up to a temperature, all of the heat is reflected back into the oven. So what I'm always amazed with these ovens is how small an amount of fire we need to get quite an intense amount of heat. And of course, how easy it is to have a little bit too much fire, to think, oh, I'm going to add a little bit more and get a really good fire going, and suddenly you've got too much heat. In the oven at the moment, I've really got quite a small fire, but if I pop my hand in, wowee, that's a 1 Mississippi oven from just a few sticks. What I'm not doing is looking at this too much, because this thermometer is right near the door, and we get much more heat at the back of these ovens. So if I check the temperature up here, 230, back of the oven, 320. So 90 degrees difference easily on the floor, and that also equates to the air temperature back to front. Few sticks burning, and I can barely get my hand in the Alpha 4 Peats. This oven does have a refractory floor, and each of the tiles there are about 3.3 kilos, 8 tiles, so I've got about 25 kilos of refractory. It's about 1/5 of my small Bushman, and it's about 1/10 of my medium-sized Bushman. but it's still a little bit of refractory, and I can use that to cook probably 2, maybe 3 hours, and certainly enough to bake some bread and do some dishes which want some stability and some evenness without a lot of fire or a lot of embers going. So I can use the refractory for sure in the Alpha oven. There are lots of these stainless steel ovens on the market, and they differ widely in quality, the amount of refractory, the amount of insulation, and so on and so on. So this is not directly applicable to every stainless steel oven out there, but certainly some of it will be. I hope this brief run through of how to understand the heat in your oven has been useful. If you've enjoyed this video, please give us a thumbs up and subscribe to our YouTube channel. We do try and provide a new video every week. If you've got any questions, please put it in the comments below, and we will try and answer all of those. And we'll provide notes and information on our blog and put a link to that in the notes below. Thanks for watching. See you next time.